Hey, welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane, where we're talking to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in our communities. What do these leaders do to get started, and what are they doing to just stay relevant in their leadership? And today, I'm talking to one of my good friends and a great leader in HR, and his name is Seth McColley. Seth is the VP of HR for Kirby Machinery. He's got over 25 years of experience in the HR space. And he's also one of those guys that I've been because he believes in networking. One of the words he is known for, one of the words he's coined is relationshiping. So, hey, Seth, how you doing, man? Welcome to the show.
I'm great, man. How you doing?
I'm great. And man, it's so good to see you. Hey, let's just start off by relationshiping. What does relationshiping mean, by the way?
Relationshiping, man. Relationshiping it's the power of, networking is kind of a dry term, kind of an old, maybe outdated term. And there's a lot of negative connotations that come with the word networking because people think it's something you go to or an event that you do or something like that. And so when I thought about it, I thought really what it is just, it's all about relationships. It's all about, so I thought, well, why don't you just take the word and just turn it into a verb and let's just call it relationshiping. So that's about as easy as it was. I just thought, networking is kind of got this stigma attached to it, good, bad, or indifferent. So I thought relationshiping sounded a lot more fun and probably a little bit more accurate.
I absolutely love it. When I think about that, I think of you. And of course, we met a few years back at a Dallas HR event, and I know you've been active in not only Dallas HR, Oklahoma City HR, and one of the questions I wanted to kind of start with our show today is, how in the world did you get into HR? Tell me that, Seth.
Oh boy. Well, I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. So I was a psychology major at the University of Texas, and I thought about wearing my burnt orange today but I thought, I don't want to do that. Who knows what you might do.
I was really hoping we wouldn't go there today, Seth, but hey, no, that's good. That's awesome.
So I was a psychology major at University of Texas, and I had this crazy idea for all the wrong reasons. I wanted to be a sports psychologist. All the wrong reasons being money. That's all I was focused on. And I ended up, getting close to the end of my degree, and I realized how much I hated psychology, and I didn't want to go to graduate school to do psychology. And so I was like, all right, I'm not going to go do that. And so I had a couple of kind of random jobs. When you graduate from college, I was in between graduation and preparing for my wedding, and long story short, it was all, it's funny, it's interesting. It all goes back to relationshiping. And so one of my college roommates at the University of Texas had just landed his first job with a small little company based in Houston. You might have heard of them, called Halliburton.
Oh, yeah.
And he was an engineering guy. And long story short, him and I were both part of the Texas Wranglers, which is a service organization at UT. And so his recruiter at the company at Halliburton, her husband was one of the founding fathers of the Texas Wranglers. And so through a series of conversations, and I saw that there was an entry-level HR job posted there. And so I was like, I think this would be great. And he said, no, you got to apply, man. She's, her husband's one, this guy. And I was like, so one thing led to another. I had a phone conversation, and I played it off like I didn't know that who she was or who her husband was, and one thing led to another. I had an interview, and 2 weeks later, I got a job offer, and so I started off as entry level as you can get. I mean, I was helping people, like I was pointing them to for the 401k forms, and I was taking passport photos and issuing parking cards and selling stuff at the company store. I mean, that's how entry level HR I was doing. And that then led to a role in benefits, which led to my first HR generalist role. And when I got into the HR generalist role, that's when my eyes were open, and I was like, okay, wow, I like this HR thing. And so that's really where it kind of took off. So it was really all about relationshiping.
I love that. I love how, when I started in the relocation business, I started from the ground up. I was working on the trucks, packing and loading and moving and helping families with relocation. And that's what you're talking about. You're talking about, hey, you know what? I started from the ground up. Served you well. I'm curious, was there a time, I like to use the term find your lane. The time you found your lane, your purpose in HR. Share that for me. Take me back to that moment.
I don't know that it was, I don't recall if there was a specific time. I do remember there was an article, you probably are familiar with this article. There was an article written many years ago by Dave Aldrich, who was kind of like the one of the godfathers of HR, professor from the University of Michigan. He wrote an article, and it was called A New Mandate for HR, and it was in Harvard Business Review. And someone had shared that article with me, and it must have been maybe 1998, 1999. And that article really just kind of reframed my the way that I thought about HR and what HR's purpose, within the organization could be and should be. And that was kind of back when people started talking about upgrading talent and seat at the table and all of those kind of those terms. And that was really when I realized, I was like, I really enjoy this people stuff, this HR stuff, and I'm pretty good at it. So maybe I'll just kind of keep doing this. And so then, I got to a point there with Halliburton where I kind of topped out. I was like, okay, I can't really, based on my situation and the organization, the where it was, there's really nowhere else for me to go. And so I went out kind of and looked outside of the organization and led me to an opportunity with ATT Wireless. And that's when I kind of left professionally and personally, that was a big turning point for me. I grew up in Sugar Land, Texas, went away to school at University of Texas. My wife and I were high school sweethearts. We got married back in Houston, and we bought her parents' house there in Sugar Land, Texas, just a couple miles from my mom. And I was working. And so when I found this new opportunity with AT&T Wireless, it was a jumping off point that was going to move us to downtown Chicago. So away from Sugar Land, away from family, away from the house, her parents' house that we bought. And it was just kind of a way to kind of just go do our own thing and kind of make our own way. And so for me, that was a big moment. First, professionally, personally, it was just a big moment. And it was like, okay, this is the way my career is going. This is the direction I'm going. This is how I'm going to do it. And that was a big moment there for me.
I love that. We actually started a book group a couple of years ago. We call it CLIMB. Stands for Connect, Lead, Inspire, Mentor, and Build. And we just finished reading the book called The Power of Moments. And what you're talking about is those moments that just stick with you. And one of the things that also talked about was, and you kind of brought it up in the Dave Aldrich article, and that is mentors. And so I was curious, and I have many. I'm curious, have there been some mentors in your life that have helped you through it, helped shape you? And if there had, do you mind sharing, even if you can't share their name, if you can share maybe some of their leadership traits for others? Because I think that most of us know the importance of just doing life together, right? Way. So share with us if you have any mentors that have been part of your.
Yeah, there's a few people that come to mind. I'll tell you. When I joined AT&T Wireless, I had and again, that was still, I mean, that was in when I joined AT&T Wireless, 1999. So I was still, early in my HR career.
Okay.
But the unique thing there was, I was living in Chicago. My manager was in Pittsburgh, and this is the first time that I had a remote manager. It was just not around. And so, but I'll tell you, Lisa Davidson was her name. Lisa was one of the best managers that I've ever had. She was phenomenal. She was just she was great in terms of the right amount of touch points and connectivity, and giving me enough autonomy where I felt like I could kind of do my thing there in Chicago with my client group, but I never felt like I was kind of stranded or out there on an island. I mean, she kind of allowed me the time and space to do my thing, but also was there, for guidance, for support when I needed it. And so, in that time that I was only there in that role. I got there in September '99, and in January 2000 is when we were packing up and we were moving to Seattle. So just a little over a year.
Okay.
And so I didn't have a whole lot of time with her, but the time that I did have with her was great. And it just taught me a lot about being a good manager, just staying connected to your people and giving them, trusting them and giving them autonomy to do their thing. So that was great. And then years down the road, kind of a neat, that's actually a really neat story. When I was, so I went to go work for AT&T Wireless. They became, AT&T, and then they got, Singular Wireless, and then back to AT&T. So I was with them during that whole thing. But when I was with Singular Wireless, I'm there in Seattle, and one of the guys that I came to know there in HR, a guy by the name of David Alexander. So David Alexander and I met there in Seattle. He was at the time, I think he was an executive director in HR, and he had an opening, an opportunity on his team to go back out into the field. It was in Denver. And so I interviewed with David for that role in Denver because I thought, Denver sounds like fun. I've never been to Denver, but sounds like great. And I kind of missed being out in the field. At that time, I was in a call center role. So I was doing HR for a call center there in the Seattle area, and I missed being out in the field. And this opportunity came up, and so I interviewed him. Spent time. I got offered the role. I joke around with him, and now that like 5 minutes after I landed, he called me and told me he was leaving the company, and in his career. So that was back in that would have been 2005, and so that was kind of back when LinkedIn was still kind of getting started, and so we were connected kind of loosely. But anyways, long story short, years go by, we both find ourselves here in Dallas. We reconnect. David is a good friend of mine. He's a mentor of mine today. We've known each other now 15 plus years. He was a guest on my podcast, and it's goes all back to relationship. And David is the one who connected me to the opportunity at Kirby Smith. So the role that I'm in today would not have happened if it weren't for that relationship with David Alexander. And so I look to him today as a good friend, but also a solid HR mentor.
I love that. I love the story about Lisa and David, and how people, they probably don't realize it at the time, how much impact they're making on other people's lives, not just in their career, but in their personal life too, and modeling leadership. I'm curious, as you're now further into your career, are you able to mentor anybody, whether it's in your company or just in your network in general, or is there anything you try to do to be to mentor?
Yeah, well, it's a good question. I like to hope so. I mean, I think that I don't know that when I think about some of the relationships that I have with more junior HR people, or people that have worked with me or for me in the past. I don't know that you would call it an official mentor relationship. Mm-hmm. Certainly people that I've stayed connected to over the years that have reached out to me from time to time for guidance, for advice. I guess I guess by definition, kind of being a mentor. But yeah, there's certainly been people that, I joke around about, one of my podcast guests, I hired her when I was there in Denver in that HR role. Her and I joke to this day that she was the best HR person I ever hired.
Wow, that's awesome.
She's fantastic. She's great. She has gone on to do some amazing things. She's got her own podcast. She's got her own executive coaching business that she's, and it's been amazing to watch her just grow and flourish. She took the role that I left. When I left Singular Wireless, she actually filled my role. And so we also joke around a little bit about that, they finally hired someone that was, really capable and competent to do the role that I was in. So.
Yeah, doesn't that just give you incredible fulfillment to see other people be successful? I know it does. You mentioned that you hope that you're mentoring people, but you're very active on social media, and I think that's a platform that people don't think about. When I think about mentoring, I think about just modeling leadership in general. I was telling somebody recently that single post can absolutely change somebody's trajectory. And for example, I started running about 5 weeks ago using the Couch to 5K app. Well, somebody had posted, they were in like week 2, and I was like, that's cool. I need to check that out. And then, a few weeks later, I downloaded the app, and I'm in week 5 now. And so it's just amazing. You don't realize that there's some great mentoring opportunities, not necessarily directly, but indirectly as well, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, you're a couple of examples that actually come to mind related to you. You were the one, if you remember, was it January of 2019? You and I, early in the first week of January, I think you and I were connecting over coffee, and I was sharing with you that I had this wild, crazy idea about a podcast. and I remember you kind of stopped and looked at me, and you're like, "What are you waiting for?" And I was like, "Yeah, but I got the microphone. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I got the intro and the outro and the van, and you're just like, you kind of stopped and looked at me, you're like, no, really, what are you waiting for?"
I do remember that.
Yeah, for me, that was like the kick in the pants that I needed. Stop making excuses and do it. But another example that you remember, you and I were guests together on the Big Girls Big Girls Pants podcast, and you guys you guys were going on and on about the book. Oh my God, I'm drawing a blank on it.
Was that the David Goggins book?
Yes. Yeah. Can't Hurt Me. And I was kind of like, oh my God, I got to read this book. Like, everyone knows about this book, and I was in the dark, and oh my God, I loved it. I mean, like, I went back. I got the audio, and so I was out running, and I'd find myself like listening to the same chapter over and over again because I was so into it. And so, I love that book. It's one of my favorites now. And so it's like, just, you guys never even like mentioned, like, I think you guys might have said, oh, you got to read it. It's a good book. But
right.
It was like, I don't know if you call that like mentoring or peer pressure or what, but yeah, you guys totally turned me on to that.
I think that's one of the cool things is that once you get to a certain part in your career and you start giving back, finding different ways to give back. One of the things I try to do, you mentioned that book. One of the things I've tried to do at the end of each year is I put out a list of my best books that I enjoyed. I enjoy reading books. And so I put out a best books and a best podcasts. And recently I had somebody come to me and ask me if I had any book recommendations. they were looking for a new book, and I just sent them that link because I had just put out that book review. So that was, so there's just a number of opportunities. So and the reason why I wanted to bring this up is for anybody watching this or listening this, that there are several ways to find a mentor. and there are several opportunities to mentor without doing it directly and taking a lot of your time, right?
Yep, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we're both very well. We're both very connected to both the Dallas HR and
Yeah.
the Oklahoma City HR organization. So those are for the HR folks out there. I would certainly encourage them to get connected and plugged in there, because there's all kinds of opportunities, formal and informal opportunities to serve and to mentor and to find a mentor and yeah, it's
So one of the reasons I wanted to start this show, Life in the Leadership Lane, is because one thing I've learned is that there are lots of different ways to have success and be successful, and a lot of different leaders do things a lot of different ways. So I was just wondering if you could take us through a day in the life of Seth McColley. What does that look like? I mean, I'm pretty sure you don't get up at noon and then say, hey, what am I going to do today? I mean, there's some practices and some disciplines probably in place in your life. And again, everybody doesn't do things the same way. Some people are morning people, some people are night people, but it seems like high achievers, high performers, they seem to have a system. So I was just wondering if you could just share, what is like a typical day? I mean, being in HR, there's probably going to be some shifting along the way and some changes, but what's a typical day look like for you?
Good question. You know, I'll it's hard to answer that right now, right? Because we're here, in shelter in place and pandemic mode and all of that. Right. So, I'm coming to you from my little, I'm not kidding. This was a costume closet before I turned into my home office. So my daughter's got 10 plus years of dance under her belt. And so this is a closet in our place that we have a little desk. I've got a printer and this was the only like quiet place that I could kind of make my own inside the house while we're, in this whole quarantine, shelter in place thing. So outside the last 6 weeks, because I won't call that normal. My routine's a little bit different now. I'm man, I wish I could tell you that I'm like this highly structured and systems process guy, and I'm not. I'm not. I am more of a night owl than I am an early person. Okay. It is very uncommon for me to go to bed before midnight. I'll just tell you that right. Not that I'm working that late, although sometimes I am, but it's very uncommon for me to go to bed before midnight. So I'm not the wake up at 5 a.m. and get going guy. But when I'm up, I'm up. Coffee for sure. I've got a little routine that I do in the morning in terms of stretch, and I always have a goal of doing my age in push-ups. And so I'm 47. I'm 47 years old, and so the last year I've actually been overachieving a little bit, and so I'll wake up and I'll do 50. Just nice. Just because, right? So I'll do do some squats. I'll do some some stretches because I'm I'm really tight, and I need to find ways to stretch out a little bit, get a bit more limber. But so that's kind of my routine there. But again, I guess maybe if on a work stand. And again, you're right. HR, there's just chaos is kind of inherent with HR. No day, there's no day is the same, right? So I remember years ago telling somebody, hey, if you really want to enjoy HR, you want to be successful in it, you have to live with the chaos. You have to embrace the chaos. If you are that kind of person where you're like, okay, I'm going to be at the office at 8, I'm going to take lunch at 11:30, I'm going to do this at 2:30, and then I'm going to get in the car, I'm going to go home at 4:30. But HR is not for you, right? That's just not, you might get a phone call and all of a sudden the next day you're on a plane taking care of a sexual harassment investigation or, something. You just never know what's going to happen. But what I have done, this is maybe where I've gotten a little bit the process and maybe a little bit maniacal. When I joined Kirby Smith, I laid out in terms of kind of what I wanted to accomplish from an HR perspective. I laid out kind of 3 key, it's highly technical word there, by the way, buckets of work. One was, run the railroad. So just the basic blocking and tackling of HR. One was, build the talent pipeline, which is about recruiting. And then the other one was better, faster, stronger. So how do we just get better? How do we just, level up and get better? And so if you were to look at my calendar, you'll notice 3, now 4, but 3, I assign a category just about every single meeting or appointment on my calendar, and it falls under one of those 3 buckets. And so it's kind of, my idea was like, okay, if I'm not focused on one of these 3 things, then is it really the best use of my time? I really need to be focused on kind of these are the things I'm focused on. My 4th one that I added just a few months ago, or about a month or so ago, is called this little thing called COVID-19. Right up in my calendar, there's a deep red in a lot of my my daily meetings or calls or webinars or things like that are all COVID-19 related. I'm leading not leading, I'm co-leading with a group at our company, and so my time has been, as a lot of us, been consumed with 19. Now we're starting the whole return to work process and all that, but it's a lot of my time is, but really I try to keep it, I try to really carve out and bucket my time in those ways. So that's really the biggest system or process I have.
Seth, I love that. I love that. I mean, that tells me that the one word I think about when I think about these buckets is intentionality, being purposeful in what you're doing every day. So I appreciate you sharing that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Now, I love that word, by the way, intentionality. It's one of my favorite words, and that's what I was going for there. But it's not perfect by any means. I mean, I certainly get distracted by things, and all of a sudden there'll be squirrel. There'll be things that pop up and derail your day. But as much as I can, I try to keep it focused. On those 3 buckets, 4 buckets now.
Yeah. Tony Bridwell calls that the purple squirrels, chasing purple squirrels. But you know what? I want people to get this part, and that is leadership. It's exciting when you have that success, and it's very challenging at times too. Things don't go always as planned, do they?
No.
Yeah. So
they don't. But let me. I will say there. I will jump in there. They don't always go as planned, but I think one of the things that I've learned over time is, and this really struck me several months ago. I was in a day-long course on emotional intelligence, and I learned a lot about myself that day, and a lot about myself as a leader that day. And I learned what I've learned over time is that when things don't go well, this may not come out the right way, but there's a certain amount of power that comes with accepting responsibility and accountability, and raising your hand and saying, you know what, I screwed up. I made a mistake, or I'm sorry, and apologizing and saying, you know what, I thought this was the way that we needed to go, and this is not the way we want to go. And so instead of, I guess what I'm trying to say is that, the younger me might have tried to deflect or try to shift the blame or tried to make excuses. And so what I've found over time is that actually there's a lot of power that comes from, and some of this is some Brene Brown stuff, right? Vulnerability, right? But just being able to say, you know what, I'm not going to get it right. When I get it right, being able to step up and say, yeah, I screwed up. So.
That is such a great point because it goes back to self-awareness. And when you're a leader, the importance of self-awareness. As a matter of fact, I mentioned earlier about the group Climb, and we had read The Power of Moments. We're currently reading High Performance Habits. Brendan Bouchard. And in that book, there is a assessment you can take under the highperformanceindicator.com, I believe is what it is. And so different people in the group right now are taking that. I think it's really fascinating to just see how different people score, but not necessarily their score, but how their perspective is. Like I'm at this is where my benchmark is, and now I know where I need to improve, versus trying to compare themselves to others.
Yeah.
Self-awareness, so important.
Awareness, powerful.
Yeah, I love this. What about so we talked a little bit about mentoring. What advice, now that you've kind of gotten further along in your career, you're a seasoned HR professional, obviously. But what advice would you give maybe people coming up, whether they're, not necessarily leaving college and getting into the HR field, but maybe they're leaving one industry and deciding, hey, I want to get into HR. What kind of advice would you give someone to have some success?
The power of saying yes. And what I mean by that, not to be confused with being a yes man or a yes woman. Not that's not about. I'm just talking about, along our journey, and I'm going to talk about professional journey. It also applies to your personal life as well. But your professional journey, there's going to be moments, there's going to be decisions, there's going to be opportunities that are presented, and there's a lot of power in saying yes. Things may not always on the surface be what they seem, but taking the time to talk with others who are wise or maybe have experience that you don't have. I remember years ago, when I moved from Chicago to Seattle, the role that I took with ATT Wireless at the time, they had never had the HR function had never had an HR person. And crazy as it sounds, back then ATT Wireless had 300 plus HR people. HR people in the HR organization, and that I'm like, what in the world? How do we have that many people? But anyways, they had never had an HR partner, so I went to Seattle to become the HR partner for the HR organization, which is like kind of like internal affairs. I don't recommend that role at all, but it was fascinating. It was great. It was a good way to learn. But anyways, I'm plugging along in that role, and an opportunity comes up to go do HR at the call center. And at the time, I wasn't real jazzed about doing HR at the call center. But I talked with a guy. I wouldn't call him a mentor, but I said, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And he just said, I think you need to do it. Like he said, like, call centers are a different world. It's a different set of issues. It'd be a great learning experience, a great place to cut your teeth from an employee relations perspective, from this, and so I not only because he suggested it, but just again, I took the time to get some advice, some counsel from other people. And so I ended up taking that role. And again, I look back now, and I'm a big believer in this idea that, we are the sum of all of the choices and decisions that we make in our life. And I look back and I'm like, man, I don't know that I would be the HR professional that I am today if I didn't have that, that time in the call center and that experience. And so all I'm saying is that, there are different times where, there's great power in saying yes, because if you say no, that opportunity is the door is shut, it's gone, it may never come back. If you say yes, it takes you one step closer, and you may eventually end up saying no because it's not the right thing. It may not be the right thing for you personally, for your values, for whatever. But you never, there's great power in saying yes.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Okay, so we come down to the last 5 or 10 minutes of the show. And I like to refer to this last portion as it's time to accelerate. And so I'm going to just ask you 3 questions here. The first question, Seth, is would you prefer a book or a podcast? I know we talked about both of them.
Podcast.
Okay. Love it. Second, do you have like a hobby or something you like to do other than work?
Well, let's see here. I've got a 16-year-old who dances and a 3-year-old who's just a maniac. So I don't really I don't know where I have time for hobbies, but I will say I do like travel. We enjoy travel. You know, we do enjoy visiting different places, doing different things. So I'd say travel.
Love that. Love that.
Kind of cliche to say working out and running and all that stuff, but I'd say travel. I miss skiing. You know, we lived in Denver for a while. We did a lot of skiing, so I do miss skiing.
Oh yeah. Oh, love Denver. How about I'm just wondering if you have like a favorite like quote or a creed you'd like to share.
Yeah, my all-time favorite quote is "A smooth sea never yielded a skilled sailor." A quote has been attributed to many people, so I'm not really sure exactly who to chalk that one up to. But yeah, no, I love that. I mean, it's just about overcoming adversity. And
Yeah, quotes inspire us, don't they?
Oh, I love quotes. I love a good quote.
So here's my final question for the show, Seth, and that is, I in my book Find Your Lane, I talk about a song I heard by Mercy Me, and it's called Dear Younger Me. And the question I have for you is, 10 years from now, let's look ahead, not look back, but 10 years from now, what is the Seth going to say to the Seth today?
So what would I like to say?
Yes. What would you like?
What would I like to say?
What would you like for the Seth 10 years from now to say to the Seth today?
Slow down. Slow down. I can get consumed by work pretty easily. I have a hard time sometimes knowing when to turn it off. Have some downtime, you know, whether it's with family or by myself or just I'm kind of like full throttle, and so I think I would just tell myself to slow down.
I love it. I've loved our time together. I always enjoy connecting with you, Seth, and so
likewise.
For anyone that might want to connect, maybe continue the conversation or have a question for you, how would they reach out to you? How would they find you?
I mean, LinkedIn's probably going to be the best way. I mean, I'm out there a lot, like you mentioned. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. That's going to be the best way to connect with me. And so I would say if you do reach out and connect with me there, just I get a lot of stuff, a lot of requests, a lot of things in the inbox. So just make mention of this or this, this podcast, this recording that helps put some context around it for me. But I'm kind of a natural connector. So that's the best way to reach me.
I would say ditto. You're a natural, brother. It's been an honor to have you on the show. You're definitely driving in the leadership lane. And I can't wait to connect again, my friend.
Look forward to breaking some bread when we can finally do that together again.